Hi everybody and welcome back to Exotics of the World TV, and in this video I am going to show you how to set up a bearded dragon enclosure. In this enclosure build we will be using different kinds of equipment, so things like LED bars and LED spot lamps, and I'll explain a little bit more when we get to that part of the video. So the bearded dragon that we are creating this enclosure for is Craig. So Craig is a part of our static collection. So Craig lives here at the shop. We typically use him for educational talks, birthday parties, that kind of thing. He's quite old at this point now as well, so he is 11 years old. So he's getting on now, bless him, he's getting on. But anyway, as always, please sit back, relax, and enjoy the content. First off, let's talk about the equipment that we are using in this enclosure. Now, we have gone for kind of like a semi-bioactive kind of build, bio-enriched if you want to call it that. So we've used things like leaf litter, live plants. If you don't want to use live plants, then that's absolutely fine. So just basically substitute where we've used live plants, just substitute them for obviously fake ones. But in terms of substrate, we have used the Pro Rep Desert Life substrate. We have also used the Pro Rep Tortoise Life substrate. We have used the Arcadia Earth Mix, and we have used, just to top it off, just to make it a little bit more naturalistic looking, we have used the Lucky Reptile Nature Brown substrate. Now, the Nature Brown substrate literally just serves the function of just decorative at this point. If for whatever reason you can't get a hold of these substrates, you can use any like sandy, soily kind of mixture. That's absolutely fine. So for example, if you're in the States, you can kind of look for your own branded kind of stuff over there. Now, in terms of heating and lighting, we are going to be using a 50-watt halogen spot lamp, a 12% Pro T5 kit with the 12% bulb that goes along with it, a 54-watt Jungle Dawn, and a 36-watt Sanzi LED spot lamp. What we're using for heat control inside this enclosure is a Evo Connected 2. So you guys sat at home, you might have completely different kinds of UVB bulbs, thermostats, additional lighting sources, and that's absolutely fine. The steps are relatively similar. So let's get into it. So you have just got your bearded dragon enclosure. What do you do next? So first things first, where are you going to put the UVB and the basking spot bulb? Now, there are different methods on basking and UV placement, but what I typically find works best is if you have it over to one side and have it lengthways going across like that. Some people have it kind of like diagonal and have the basking spot in the center. It doesn't really matter, the animal's still going to be getting enough UVB. So what we have done in this enclosure, we have run alongside the T5 and the Jungle Dawn. And then more towards one end, we have then placed the basking spot bulb. Now, the basking spot bulb needs to overlap your UVB. Therefore, the animal doesn't have to choose between the basking opportunity and UVB. It can still soak up UVB as it is basking. Now, you'll also see that the LED bulb is angled, but also pointing at the basking spot bulb. Now, you might ask, why have we got additional lights in here? I don't have these additional lights. What do I do? Now, these are completely optional. However, personally to me as a keeper that has been keeping for, at this point, 20 years, I always find it is best to offer the animal as much light as we possibly can, especially as it is a diurnal species. So the wavelengths that are produced by the Jungle Dawn and indeed the Sanzi just complement each other. And at the minute, it is one of the ways that we can get to the closest as we possibly can to sunlight in our enclosures. Now, supplying the animals with LED lights has all sorts of benefits. However, I'm not going to go into too much detail into this video. I'll probably do another video later down the line on that. So once you've sorted out the placement of your bulbs, you will then need to attach them to the roof. Now, with the Pro T5 kits, you'll get like little attaching like clips and brackets and screws. So you just pop those to the roof and then clip the Pro T5 kit in that way. The same can be said for the Jungle Dawn as well if you have one. Once the Pro T5 kit is in place, it is then time for your basking spot bulb. So we would always recommend using like a ceramic lamp holder with a decent enough gap from the wood to the actual lamp holder itself. We see far too many times the ones that are like plugged directly to the ceiling. They can sometimes arc and they can sometimes set on fire. So these are definitely the safer option. Just note that the Arcadia ones do not come with screws, so you will need to get some additional screws. Once these are in place, let's then move on to the thermostat. So thermostats will come in all different shapes and sizes. However, the premise should still be the same. What you want is a high range dimming thermostat. Now this attaches to your basking spot bulb, not your UVB, not any other form of lighting in there, just your heat source. Now this is going to control the temperature inside your enclosure. So once the probe that you get on the thermostat is in, that should be the only thing of the thermostat that is inside it. I've seen it quite a lot where people have actually put the thermostat inside the enclosure. All you need to do is just put the probe in there. Once you're happy with your placement of your probe, so some people like it at the opposite end, some people like it directly into the basking spot, but what I would just say to do what works best for you, basically. As long as the basking spot is getting hot enough and the cool end is cool enough, then you'll be absolutely fine. So just before you put your substrate in, you need to make sure that all of your equipment is working. If it is working, then you can move on to definitely my favorite part, the actual building of the enclosure. So first of all, what we're going to do is we're going to pop all of the substrate in there. So like I said, we've got Tortoise Life in there, we've got the ProRep desert bedding in there, and we later down the line will also be adding the Arcadia Arid Earth Mix, and then to top us up, we will be then adding the Lucky Reptile Nature Brown substrate. So what we're going to do in this enclosure, because the lip is quite short, we're going to be ramping up the substrate in the back. So there are a couple of reasons why we're doing this. So the plants themselves can like dig right deep into the substrate. Now, because this is an arid setup, like the surface level and just a bit below is going to be quite dry, so we need it quite thick. Now, the substrate also needs to allow the passage of water so the roots do not get bogged down with water. Otherwise, you will overwater your plants. Also, for the grasses, it's really important that the roots have got a long way to go so they can really bed in there. We're also going to make it really thick to add tunnel systems in there for the bearded dragon, or basically create different burrows for the animal. So we're going to create a burrow in the hot side of the enclosure and a couple of burrows in the cool end of the enclosure. Once the substrate's in, it is then time to add the hardscape. So to add the rocks, woods, that type of thing. Now, when we're setting up these enclosures, a lot of the time it is going to be trial and error. So you might have like a really good idea in your head, oh, I'm going to put this log here, or I'm going to put this stone here, and sometimes it just doesn't work out. It doesn't flow in the overall feng shui. Let's call it feng shui. The feng shui of the enclosure. once all the hardscape is done, it is now time to add the finishing touches. And this is the leaf litter. Now, why are we going to be adding leaf litter in there? Because we are going to be putting isopods in there. Now, the isopods that we have chosen are arid springtails and Greek isopods. Now, these springtails and these pods are going to be absolutely fine with dealing with the heat. However, we have still offered them different humid refuges in terms of the thickness of the substrate and as well the leaf litter that is in there, which will be one of their main sources of food. And that about wraps us up for this video. If you did like the content, please make sure that you give us a like, share, and a subscribe. It really does help the channel out. But that's enough for me, and I will see you in the next one. Cheers, love.